What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, and with this new big patch that dropped, there's a lot of characters that are all of a sudden very good in the new meta. That being said, we're picking 8 of those characters out and giving you tips and tricks on them, things that you should and should not be doing in each and every one of your games to guaranteed have more value and start to climb. Now, speaking of climbing, GameLeap.com is the one place that you can find in-depth VODs over all these characters. So if one of these characters catches your fancy and you want to know more, you want to see step-by-step instruction on how to perform in-game, go check it out on GameLeap.com. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now, kicking it off with the first character on the list, a character that is unsurprisingly doing very well with the new Brig nerfs, we have Tracer. Now, as Tracer, one of the most important things that you need to practice over and over again is taking duels. Tracer has the capability to 1v1 every hero in the game, and you should be seeking out isolated duels whenever you can on enemies. Whether that means 1v1ing supports, 1v1ing other DPS like MCCREEs, Tracer can really take these duels and win them a lot of times, especially if she gets the jump on an enemy, and that can just bring a raw numbers advantage to her team. Plus, she has her recall to get her out. Now, the next big thing that you need to do though, however, is play off your cooldowns. You do not need to be doing something every single second. You need to be going in, using your cooldowns, trying to duel enemies, get value, get picks, burn down enemy tanks, or do whatever you have to. And then when your cooldowns are over, you exhausted a recall plus all your blinks, you wait for them to come back online before you engage again. Now, the last tip I have for you on Tracer is develop time to get the positioning you want. You see, on Tracer, it's all about the setup, because like I said, you don't want to use your cooldowns to engage the enemy from too far away, and then when you're on the enemy you have none. So positioning or routing is really important. This could be like using 2 blinks to get to the left cubby, wait for your blinks to come back online, use 2 blinks to go up the stairs, wait for your cooldowns to go back online, then fall down on an enemy and then have your blinks to duel them. This is all like developing your positioning. You don't have to blink, start fighting an enemy. No, you don't have to do that at all. Set up your positioning. Don't be afraid to sneak there. Don't be afraid to slowly crouch up on your positioning to do something. Maybe you want to get into the enemy's back line. Maybe you want to get into their high ground. Whatever you have to do, spend time. You have time. Time is a resource. Spend time developing or getting to the positioning that you want to be the most effective. Now, moving on to the next character on the list, and this is a character that is an all-star in this new meta, and that's ROADHOG. Now, we went over a 6 VOD review who was a nutty hog. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. But the big thing that should always be true when you're playing ROADHOG is you should be connected to natural cover. You can get naded, slept, pulled. You're the #1 target for enemy damage, and you could be a giant old battery. You never ever want to get caught out as ROADHOG, and in order to ensure that, you need to be playing around pillars, walls, any sort of natural cover so that you never get caught out. Now, the next thing that you could do on ROADHOG that is really powerful is contesting non-CC things on the high ground. So there are certain abilities that you have to watch out for. Like I said, sleep dart, sometimes even stuns, things like that from like MCCREE or Brig or whatever. But some characters you're not afraid of in any way. Characters like Echo, characters like Widow, characters like Soldier. Basically, if a character doesn't have a substantial form of CC, you can push them. And in a lot of cases, it's your job to push them off the high ground, because some of your DPS can do it, but if there's multiple ones of them on the high ground, or they have pockets or anything like that, a lot of your teammates might not be able to burst them. Like, imagine you have a Tracer and they have a Soldier plus a Zen on the high ground. It's going to be very hard for your Tracer to do anything about that, but you as ROADHOG can legitimately at least try to contest them, try to get a hook off, fish for a kill in a way that a lot of your DPS, and that's one of the things that ROADHOG really thrives at. Now, the next thing you need to realize is remember that the convergence fire of ROADHOG's alternate fire expands at exactly 8 meters. So you need to practice that range, because just after that is that sweet spot where you can one-shot, headshot all kinds of heroes, 250 HP heroes even. So make sure that you practice it, put time and effort into doing it, and you can sometimes get these one-shots that are pretty unfair because they're from so far away. You didn't even need hook to get it. Now, the last thing that you should be doing on ROADHOG is rotating your body when you hook. This allows you to pull people to high grounds, pull people through doors, pull people to where they're facing your team. This is just more additional value, and there's some scenarios where it can get an insane amount of value, like even pulling people off the map. So definitely practice it, practice trying it, and sometimes you'll even pull people straight through walls even though you didn't think that it could happen. But you'll be surprised how much this kind of play actually just breaks the game in your favor. Now, the next character we gotta talk about is Ana, who is very good. Of course, when Hog's good, Ana's great, but Ana's just very good in a lot of situations right now. Now, the biggest thing that you need to do on Ana if you want to climb is adapt to your scenario. Sometimes you want to be aggressive on Ana, and traditionally you do, because you're not gonna get anywhere just heal botting all the time. There's other characters that could do that job, but Ana has the capability of carrying fights with powerful sleeps and nades, but it really depends on the scenario. If you have really good tanks or a really good frontline, really good DPS, and they're plowing through the enemy, all you have to do is enable them. Now, if they are consistently not doing anything, they're not finding value, they're just standing at the choke, they're doing nothing with all the resources you're giving them, then you need to try to find value in other ways. You need to try to supplement that with maybe your own picks or your own fat nades or your own form of playmaking. That is the call that you have to make on Ana, and that is a big part of the skill set on Ana and the skill ceiling on Ana. Now, the next thing you need to think about is your positioning on Ana, and what does that give you? Some positioning make you far safer, but it's a lot harder for you to make a play, whilst other positioning, like playing on the high ground, can let you make a nade play, but you're more susceptible depending on what the enemy has. Also, think about what DPS and different characters the enemy have, because that will directly dictate your positioning. For example, I'm not going to play on the high ground when the enemy has Winston and Genji, because it doesn't matter if I have that high ground advantage. These characters can vertically attack me, and it makes me actually more susceptible to a dive. Now, maybe if the enemy only have low ground characters, maybe they have something like a MCCREE instead, they have Ryan Zarya, they can't get up vertically, playing that high ground means that all I have to do is back up from the high ground and they can't reach me anymore. So that is the difference. Understanding how your positioning is directly affected by what the enemy picks is extremely vital. Now, the next character is a character that is just nuts. Every single patch we talk about how nuts he is, and he's just getting better and better, and it's Hammond. Now, Hammond is like this unstoppable mobility monster that can hypothetically never die. If you can learn to master him, you can hard carry games at any rank. Now, the first thing you should try to do on Hammond is call timings on slams for engage. You see, Hammond is actually kind of difficult to dive with because it takes him a great deal of setup to start a dive. Like, think about how Genji or Tracer or Winston dive. They can go straight in directly, start doing damage. But Hammond, a lot of times, has to swing in the proper way in order to get the right swing off, because he can't just flop into the enemy team unless he has the perfect slam down or whatever. So it takes a great deal of setup. So a lot of times, if you could say something like, hey, I'm going to be slamming the enemy team in 5, 4, 3, 2, and it gives your teammates some time to kind of coordinate, or at least start to get ready to do damage at the same time you slam in for better team engages. The next thing you could do is just call out used cooldowns by enemies. Hey, they use sleep dart, they use nade, they use stun. These type of things are really important, because let's say you have a Genji that wants to blade, or let's say you have a Tracer that wants to go all in. If they don't have sleep dart, or if they don't have MCCREE stun, that Tracer's just gonna go nuts. He's gonna go all in, try to one clip someone. So calling out these type of cooldowns can be so much value for your team. Now, the last thing and surprising thing is practice your tracking if you want to play Hammond. There are a lot of kills that you could just barely get if you have good tracking on Hammond. When you slam them, that's easy, but even just chasing someone down that's half HP, a Hammond has a pretty lethal gun, and he has such a big health pool that he can really win tons of 1v1 matchups against enemies if they're not getting pocketed. So definitely practice your tracking and you'll be more lethal and get more kills overall. Now, the next character I have for you is Baptiste, and the first tip I have for you is Immortality Field is invaluable, but there's a lot of different ways to use it. The most reliable way is to use it behind natural cover because it's protected, but of course, you're not always going to be able to do that in whatever scenario comes up. Now, you can also use it to save a lot of people if you have a fast enough reaction time. Throw it against the wall to save someone from a Doomfist punch. Throw it against a ROADHOG to save someone from a ROADHOG hook. These type of plays not only can save someone that would have died, but can allow you to turn the tables on that person, ending up in a kill. Speaking of doing that, you can also just use Immortality Field in a 1v1, and this works really well if you make enemies think like you don't have Immortality Field. Maybe someone comes and duels you, and they're fighting you a little bit. You're low, you're fighting them, both of you are getting some damage onto each other, and then you throw down the Immortality Field. That essentially gives you an extra 150 health total, plus you don't have to worry about being attacked by them, so you can just plant your feet, line up your shots, finish them off, and just get basically a kill for an Immortality Field. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. Now, the next thing you need to be doing on Baptiste is make sure that you call whenever you're amplification matrixing. This happens a lot where players will just amplification matrix right when they get it. It's really good to call it because you don't want your Ryan to like waste Fire Strike before, and then you amp, and then he doesn't have Fire Strike, and then his Fire Strike's on cooldown for the entire time. So maybe if you're close, you could tell him so he saves his Fire Strike, holds on to it, and then he'll have it for the amplification. But that could apply to any ability like Nade, like Dynamite, or whatever. It's always good to call when you're close, relay that information to your team. Now, the next thing, a big mistake that happens on BAP is don't jump for no reason. If you're going from the high ground to the low ground, just fall. Don't jump. Don't start jumping like crazy for absolutely no reason. Sure, if someone's chasing you on the low ground, a Doomfist, a Genshi, or whatever, that is legitimate reasons. But if you just start jumping for no reason up against soldiers, Hanzos, Widowmakers, maybe at your rank right now, they're not going to punish you, but I promise you will start getting punished for that more and more. So definitely keep that in mind. Make sure that you don't jump without intent. Now, moving on to the next character on the list that we have for you, Rockstar right now, just a jack of all trades character, is MCCREE. Now, the most important thing that you could do on MCCREE is learn the flashbang matchups and how they interact with a lot of the important characters in the meta. So this could be like learning the intricacies of flashing above or below a Reinhardt shield and him trying to bait you out, or flashing above or below a Genji reflect. Learning that you need to save flashbang until you physically see a Roadhog start to use breather, and you need to do whatever you can to force him to use breather unless he gets to a low enough life total to where you know if you throw your flashbang and you fire at him, you can finish him off before he gets the breather off. That's a really interesting like little matchup because there's like a really fine line there, and it really depends on also, do you hit headshots? How weak is he? Does he have anything like Discord on him? That's something that you need to understand, and these are the flashbang matchups and the intricacies and what you need to specifically use them to shut down. Now, the last tip I'll give for you on MCCREE is just set your ult up correctly. There is a lot of ways to get value out of MCCREE's High Noon. The most consistent one probably is using it for characters like Pharah, Mercy, Echo. When they fly up in the air, all you do is ult them and shut them out of the sky. But if it's premeditated, it is so strong. And it's like, have you ever held a point, but you know enemies are gonna come in, and you know they're about to enter the point, and maybe it's last fight, you're about to win the game, so they are coming in. What you could do is you could say, hey, Ryan, shield me, I'm gonna High Noon, and you get pocketed by your Ryan, you get immortality field from your BAP, and all you're doing is standing behind your Ryan shield and holding your High Noon. You're not gonna get slept, you're not gonna get bursted, and if they come in, you will get sustained long enough to get tons of kills, and if they don't come in, then they just lose, right? Because you're doing it at the very end to create that pressure. So this is a way that you can set up an ultimate, and you could do this a lot of other ways, like, hey, Diva, DM me, hey, Zara, can you bubble me, hey, Brig, can you shield me? That even happens, that works too. There's a lot of different things that you can actually do to set up a High Noon, and honestly, a lot of times combining a High Noon with some sort of ability can allow you to actually get value on it, where instead it's a Q button, go back to spawn type of thing. Now, the next character on the list that we have for you is Widowmaker, and the most important thing, I talk about it a lot, but it's very important on Widowmaker, and it's proper distancing. You need to be properly distancing from enemies at all times, keeping track of where they are. Don't let a flanking hog flank all the way around the right side of the map and kill you. Do not ever get within range of a Winston's jump. It is very important to constantly be looking for opportunity to get picks, and then looking for a reposition, because enemies are always creeping. They're always going to get closer and closer. They're going to take a little bit more space and a little bit more space, trying to creep up on you, and you can definitely catch these enemies in transition, get a pick on them, but if you don't, you still need to give yourself more time to do that kind of thing, so you're just slowly fixing your positioning every time. Maybe look down your scope, try to find a few opportunities, and then reassess, back up, reposition, and then do it again, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Now, the next thing you need to do on Widow is practice versus all kinds of matchups. People really love to practice the Widow v Widow matchup, and they just become gods at it, but you need to realistically practice all kinds of matchups, and I'm talking about against tanks too. How do you win against a Genji, for example, or maybe a Tracer pushing you, or even a Monkey? Learning the different kinds of matchups is important, and on top of this, make sure that you never give up. This happens a lot where you get overwhelmed and you see Widows just like, they hands off the controller, hands off the mouse and keyboard, and they just give up. If you don't believe that you can hit those god tier shots, if you don't believe that you can hit that 180 headshot and win the matchup, then what are you even playing Widow for? Always go for the Hail Mary shots, practice again and again, because that's the only way that you'll actually ever hit them, is if you try for them every single time. Never give up. It's not over until you're actually dead. Now, another thing on Widow is don't underestimate the SMG, especially if you hit a full-powered body shot on some characters. Someone like MCCREE, sometimes just having good left-right crouch spam and then just aiming center mass with the SMG can do enough to finish them off. You don't always need to go in for that next shot, because after you got that first shot, trying to get that second shot could be very difficult. Now, for the last thing, remember that Venom mine can change damage numbers. For example, if you have a mine run on top of you and you know a Genji's gonna dive you, if you body shot him and melee him, he will die to the mine. So that is a damage point that means, hey, I don't really need to go for a headshot here. All I need to do is body shot him on the way in and then turn around and melee him, and I'll win the matchup if he hits my mine. That is something that can really change the matchup, and it's just important to know. Mine does 75 damage. It's important to know how that will affect a lot of your matchups. Now, moving on to the last, but certainly not least here on the list, we have Lucio. And the most important tip that I could give you on Lucio is swap between DPS and peel as needed. Sometimes you could be that DPS Reddit Lucio. You go chase out MCCREEs, you duel them, you harass the enemy backline, Widows you give them no line of sight, and you can get tons of value that way. Now, in other cases, your Ana is just going to get killed again and again unless you consistently peel, and if you keep her alive, you are bringing so much value to the table, because not only are you helping your team with speed boost, but you're also protecting your main healer. This type of dichotomy between DPS and peel Lucio, finding the perfect balance is the key to carrying the most amount of games. Now, as another additional tip, unless your team are all critical, you should almost never full heal amp. All pros will only half heal amp, and the reason they do that is because full healing is too much, and you do want to incorporate some speed in there, because speed is effectively worth more HP, because it can get you behind natural cover quicker, it can get you back regrouped quicker, it can make you make a play quicker. There's just a lot of plus sides to that, so you almost never want to do a full heal. Sometimes it's like a partial heal and then the rest speed, but most of the time it's going to be full speed. Now, the biggest mistake on Lucio by far, no matter what rank you are, is ult usage. Ult usage is how you carry so much on Lucio, because sometimes you want to ult defensively, sometimes you want to ult in and go in aggressively. It really depends on the situation, and you never want to get killed, caught out, or waste an ultimate when there's something else you need to be thinking about. This is why tracking enemy ultimates, nano blade, grab, things like that is so important, and then also understanding the win condition. Like, imagine a scenario where they have nano blade, right? But their Ana is dead and they're 5, they're waiting near their choke. You make the call, you speed in, you beat in aggressively, and y'all kill them, and the time ticks down and you win the game. This is where you forced a fight with your beat. You never gave them an opportunity to set up the ultimate, the nano blade combo, so you never had to put yourself in this bad scenario where maybe my beat will counter their entire nano blade. I'm not sure. This is the type of call you can make on Lucio. This is the type of play you can make on Lucio, so definitely think about trying to do this type of stuff in your games. Now, the last tip that we have in the video, the last tip on Lucio, is set up for the double CC. Remember, how CC works is if one person is already CC'd, a second CC on top of that is going to affect them far more, and they're not going to be able to DI or directional influence. So that means if someone gets pulled up with a RZA pool, or if someone gets slept midair, your boop will send them so far, and if you could set up this kind of stuff with an ally, you can just get so much value. Like if your Doomfist uppercuts, or they get stunned by MCCREE, whatever, set up a double CC. You can coordinate this as Lucio, or you can look for it, watch out for it, and get some free boops off the map, which is always fun. Anyways, I hope you learned something from this video, but I promise you, you will learn 100 times more information on the GameLeap website. So if you want to look at any VOD reviews, advanced tips, advanced concepts, whatever you need to improve, we got it at the GameLeap website. So go check it out. Links down below. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.